John F. Kennedy, lone gunman, or coordinated assassination? Official findings versus decades of conflicting testimony and missing files. The motorcade was running late. It was a clear Friday in Dallas, Texas. The sky was open and bright, the kind of day that invites crowds outdoors. People lined the streets hours in advance, leaning out of office windows, standing on curbs, lifting children onto their shoulders. For many, this was not just a presidential visit. It was a moment of reassurance in an uneasy era, a chance to see stability embodied in a familiar face. At 12:30 p.m., as the presidential limousine passed through Dealey Plaza, that sense of normalcy collapsed in seconds. Shots rang out. Some witnesses thought they were firecrackers. Others instinctively ducked. Within moments, confusion spread faster than clarity. The car accelerated. Secret Service agents reacted in real time, without the benefit of hindsight or certainty. By the time the motorcade reached Parkland Memorial Hospital, the outcome was no longer in doubt. The President of the United States was dead. What followed was not silence, but noise. Sirens, radio transmissions, shouted instructions, interrupted programming. News anchors struggled to speak while processing what they themselves were hearing. For a brief period, nothing felt solid. Facts were provisional. Timelines shifted. Names emerged and disappeared. The country entered a state of collective shock, not only because of what had happened, but because of how little was immediately understood. In the days that followed, answers came quickly. An arrest was made. A suspect was identified. Within hours, the narrative seemed to take shape. And yet, even as the official explanation began to settle into place, doubt appeared alongside it, quietly at first, then persistently. Why did so many people remember the event differently? Why did witness accounts diverge so sharply? Why, decades later, were documents still being withheld? This documentary does not attempt to resolve those questions. Instead, it examines how they came to exist at all. This is a story not only about an assassination, but about uncertainty, institutions, and the long shadow cast when public trust and official certainty fail to align. This documentary explores historical records, official findings, and the theories and public speculation that emerged around them, without asserting any single interpretation as definitive. To understand why the assassination of John F. Kennedy became one of the most scrutinized events in modern history, it is necessary to step back into the world in which it occurred. In 1963, the United States was a country under pressure, even if that pressure was not always visible on the surface. The Cold War shaped nearly every aspect of public life. The threat of nuclear conflict was not abstract. It had been made tangible just 1 year earlier during the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the world came closer to nuclear war than at any point before or since. Civil defense drills, fallout shelters, and constant geopolitical tension created an atmosphere in which secrecy was normalized and fear was managed rather than eliminated. At home, the country was divided. The civil rights movement was challenging long-standing systems of segregation and discrimination, often met with resistance that was both political and violent. Protests, arrests, and televised confrontations made it clear that national unity was fragile. Trust in institutions varied sharply, depending on where one stood. Against this backdrop, Kennedy occupied a complex position. To many, he represented youth, optimism, and a modern vision of leadership. His administration projected confidence and forward momentum, particularly in its emphasis on science, space exploration, and international diplomacy. To others, he was a source of frustration or concern. His handling of Cuba, his evolving stance on civil rights, and his relationships with military and intelligence leaders placed him at the center of internal disagreements that were rarely visible to the public at the time. The presidency itself was also changing. Television had transformed political communication. For the first time, Americans felt they knew their president personally. His speeches, press conferences, and even his mannerisms were broadcast into living rooms across the country. This closeness intensified both admiration and scrutiny. When Kennedy was assassinated, the loss felt immediate and intimate, as if a familiar presence had been abruptly removed. The institutions responsible for national security and law enforcement operated under very different norms than they do today. The intelligence community functioned largely in secrecy, justified by the demands of the Cold War. Information was compartmentalized. Oversight was limited. Federal agencies rarely disclosed internal disagreements or operational details. This was not considered unusual at the time. It was seen as necessary. The media landscape reflected similar constraints. Journalists relied heavily on official briefings and government statements. Investigative reporting existed, but it had not yet taken on the adversarial role it would assume in later decades. When authorities spoke, their words carried significant weight. This context matters because it shaped both the response to the assassination and the way its explanation was received. When President Kennedy was killed, the government faced an urgent problem. Beyond identifying who was responsible, it needed to restore stability. The assassination of a sitting president posed not only a criminal question, but a national security one. Rumors of foreign involvement, internal plots, or widespread conspiracies had the potential to escalate fear at a dangerous moment in global politics. Clarity, even imperfect clarity, was essential. Within hours of the shooting, Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested. Within 2 days, he was dead, shot by nightclub owner Jack Ruby while in police custody. That second killing, broadcast live on television, shocked the public anew. Any possibility of a trial, cross-examination, or extended interrogation vanished instantly. In response, the federal government moved quickly to consolidate information and establish an official account. This was not unusual. In moments of national crisis, governments often centralize investigations to ensure consistency and control. What was different in this case was the scale of public attention and the permanence of the questions that followed. Witnesses had seen different things. Some reported hearing shots from multiple directions. Others described movements that did not align neatly with early reconstructions. Physical evidence existed, but interpretations varied. Medical findings were complex and, in some cases, incomplete. None of this automatically implied wrongdoing or deception. Large, chaotic events often produce conflicting accounts. Memory is unreliable under stress. Documentation can be lost or damaged. But the combination of rapid conclusions, limited transparency, and unresolved inconsistencies created fertile ground for doubt. Over time, that doubt did not fade. Instead, it hardened. As years passed, new generations encountered the assassination not as a lived experience, but as a historical puzzle. Films, books, and documentaries revisited the event, often highlighting unanswered questions rather than settled facts. Declassified documents appeared gradually, sometimes confirming known details, sometimes introducing new ambiguities. Each release reignited interest. Each omission raised new suspicions. Why were some files sealed for decades? Why did official investigations reach different conclusions at different times? Why did public confidence remain divided, even after extensive review? These questions did not arise in a vacuum. They were shaped by broader shifts in American society. The late 1960s and 1970s saw a series of revelations that fundamentally altered public trust. Government secrecy, once accepted, began to look suspect. Intelligence abuses, covert operations, and political scandals demonstrated that official narratives were not always complete or accurate. In that environment, earlier assurances were re-examined with new skepticism. The assassination of Kennedy, already emotionally charged, became a focal point for that reassessment. It came to symbolize more than a single act of violence. For many, it represented a turning point, the end of an era in which institutions were assumed to act transparently and in good faith. Whether that perception was fair or not, it profoundly influenced how the event was remembered and reinterpreted. What makes the Kennedy assassination unique is not simply the number of theories surrounding it, but the persistence of those theories across generations. Few historical events have been analyzed so exhaustively, yet resolved so unevenly in the public mind. Some accept the official explanation without hesitation. Others remain unconvinced, citing unanswered questions and withheld records. Many occupy a middle ground, uncertain but curious, aware that complexity does not always yield clean conclusions. This documentary does not seek to tell viewers what to believe. Instead, it begins by acknowledging a simple reality. On November 22, 1963, something happened that changed the course of American history. The official story that followed was intended to bring closure. For some, it did. For others, it opened a door that has never fully closed. Before examining alternative explanations, before weighing evidence or counter-arguments, it is necessary to understand the foundation on which everything else rests. The official narrative. That story, presented with authority and confidence, shaped public understanding from the very beginning. To evaluate any challenge to it, one must first understand it in full, on its own terms, without suspicion or embellishment. The official narrative. In the hours after President Kennedy was pronounced dead, the task facing authorities was immediate and immense. A president had been assassinated in broad daylight. The nation was watching. The world was watching. What followed needed to be clear, authoritative, and stabilizing. By early afternoon on November 22, 1963, Dallas police announced the arrest of Lee Harvey Oswald. He had been taken into custody at the Texas Theater after a brief altercation with officers. At the time of his arrest, Oswald was a 24-year-old former Marine who had previously defected to the Soviet Union before returning to the United States. Within hours, he was identified publicly as the primary suspect in the assassination. According to police statements, Oswald had been employed at the Texas School Book Depository, the building overlooking Dealey Plaza, from which investigators concluded the shots were fired. Witnesses reported seeing a man with a rifle in an upper floor window shortly before the motorcade passed. A rifle was later recovered on the 6th floor of the building, along with spent cartridge casings. Oswald was interrogated over the next 2 days. He denied any involvement in the assassination and rejected the accusation that he had shot either President Kennedy or Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit, who was killed roughly 45 minutes after the assassination. Oswald was never formally charged with the president's murder. He insisted to reporters that he was a patsy, a term that would later become central to public discussion. On November 24, 1963, before any trial or extended legal proceedings could take place, Oswald was shot and killed by Jack Ruby while being transferred through the basement of Dallas Police Headquarters. The shooting was broadcast live on national television. Ruby, a local nightclub owner with known connections to law enforcement and organized crime figures, claimed he acted out of grief and anger, insisting he wanted to spare Jacqueline Kennedy the ordeal of a trial. Oswald's death eliminated the possibility of courtroom testimony, cross-examination, or a detailed public accounting from the accused himself. In response, President Lyndon B. Johnson authorized the creation of a federal commission to investigate the assassination and provide a definitive account of what had occurred. The Warren Commission was established just 1 week after the assassination. Officially titled the President's Commission on the Assassination of President Kennedy, it was chaired by Chief Justice Earl Warren and included prominent political figures from both parties. Its stated purpose was to investigate the facts surrounding the assassination and evaluate whether Oswald acted alone or as part of a larger conspiracy. Over the course of 10 months, the commission reviewed thousands of documents and conducted extensive interviews. Testimony was taken from witnesses present in Dealey Plaza, law enforcement officers, medical personnel, and individuals connected to Oswald's personal and professional life. The commission also examined physical evidence, including the rifle attributed to Oswald, ballistic materials, photographs, and medical reports. In September 1964, the Warren Commission released its final report. The commission concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone in assassinating President Kennedy. According to the report, Oswald fired 3 shots from the 6th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository. 1 shot missed, 1 struck the president in the upper back, exited through his throat, and continued on to wound Texas Governor John Connally, who was seated in front of him. the third shot struck the president in the head, causing the fatal injury. This sequence of events became central to the official narrative. The commission's explanation of the bullet that struck both Kennedy and Connolly came to be known as the single bullet theory. It held that a single projectile caused multiple wounds due to the positioning of the men in the limousine and the angle of the shot. This theory was presented not as speculation, but as a necessary conclusion based on ballistic evidence and timing constraints. Ballistics testing linked the rifle found in the depository to Oswald. The weapon, a Mannlicher Carcano rifle, was traced to a mail-order purchase made under an alias associated with him. Fingerprint and palm print evidence placed Oswald on boxes near the 6th floor window. Fibers consistent with those from the rifle were found on Oswald's clothing. The commission also addressed Oswald's background. It portrayed him as a troubled individual with a history of political extremism, personal instability, and dissatisfaction with his own life. His defection to the Soviet Union, pro-Castro activities, and erratic behavior were presented as indicators of alienation rather than evidence of organized affiliation. The report concluded that Oswald acted independently, motivated by personal grievances rather than directed by any government or organization. Jack Ruby's killing of Oswald was also investigated. The commission determined that Ruby acted alone and impulsively. It found no credible evidence that Ruby was part of a conspiracy to silence Oswald. His connections to organized crime figures were acknowledged but deemed unrelated to the assassination itself. According to the report, Ruby's actions were driven by emotional distress and a desire for public recognition. Beyond individual actions, the commission examined the possibility of foreign involvement. It reviewed intelligence on Oswald's time in the Soviet Union and his interactions with Cuban and Soviet officials. The report concluded that neither the Soviet Union nor Cuba had any involvement in the assassination. Given the Cold War context, this finding was emphasized as particularly significant, as it reduced the risk of international escalation. The Warren Commission's conclusions were formally accepted by the federal government. President Johnson endorsed the findings. Federal agencies aligned their positions with the report. Major media outlets summarized its conclusions for the public, often emphasizing the thoroughness of the investigation and the authority of those involved. For many Americans, the report provided closure. It offered a clear explanation, supported by evidence, and delivered by respected figures. In an era accustomed to institutional authority, this carried substantial weight. The idea that a lone individual could assassinate a president was disturbing, but it was also contained. It implied tragedy rather than systemic failure. However, even within the commission's own documentation, complexity remained. Some witnesses gave accounts that were difficult to reconcile. Certain evidentiary gaps were acknowledged, but judged not to undermine the overall conclusion. The report emphasized probability and coherence rather than absolute certainty. Its goal was not to answer every question, but to determine responsibility. In the years that followed, additional investigations revisited aspects of the assassination. The most significant of these was the House Select Committee on Assassinations in the late 1970s. While largely reaffirming the conclusion that Oswald fired the shots that killed Kennedy, the committee suggested a high probability that a conspiracy existed, based on acoustic evidence that was later disputed. Despite this, no additional shooters were identified, and no charges were brought. Declassified materials released over time have added detail, but not altered the core official position. From the government's standpoint, the case remains closed. Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. The evidence, while complex, supports this conclusion. No credible proof of a coordinated assassination has been established. And yet, for many, this explanation has never fully settled the matter. The speed with which conclusions were reached, the loss of the primary suspect, and the gradual release of information over decades have continued to invite scrutiny. Even those who accept the official findings often acknowledge unresolved elements and unanswered questions. Understanding this official narrative in full is essential. It forms the foundation against which all alternative interpretations are measured. Before examining doubts, anomalies, or competing explanations, it is necessary to recognize what the government concluded, how it reached those conclusions, and why they were accepted at the time. Only then can the next question be addressed. If the case was closed, why did it never truly close in the public mind? That question leads directly into the emergence of the first wave of conspiracy theories, and the reasons they took hold so quickly after the official story was told. The first wave of conspiracy theories. The official explanation of President Kennedy's assassination was intended to bring certainty. For many Americans, it did. But almost as soon as it was presented, alternative interpretations began to surface, not on the fringes of society, but in mainstream conversation. These early conspiracy theories did not emerge decades later, shaped by the internet or social media. They appeared within months, sometimes weeks, of the assassination itself. They were raised by journalists, lawyers, former government officials, and ordinary citizens who believed that key elements of the official narrative did not fully align with what they had seen, heard, or read. At the center of this early skepticism was a simple concern. The story had been concluded too quickly, and too many questions seemed to have been left behind. One of the earliest and most prominent critics was Mark Lane, a New York attorney who began publicly questioning the Warren Commission's findings while its work was still underway. Lane argued that witness testimony had been selectively interpreted and that contradictory accounts were minimized or dismissed. His objections were not framed as accusations of malice, but as challenges to the completeness and rigor of the investigation. Lane's concerns were echoed by journalists who had covered the assassination firsthand. Some reporters noted that eyewitness statements from Dealey Plaza described hearing shots from more than one direction. Others recalled seeing individuals running toward the grassy area behind the picket fence on the small hill near the motorcade route, a location that soon became central to alternative explanations. This area, later referred to simply as the grassy knoll, quickly entered the public lexicon. The grassy knoll theory suggested that at least one shot may have been fired from this location, rather than exclusively from the Texas schoolbook depository. Supporters of this idea pointed to witness accounts describing smoke, movement, or sounds originating from that direction. They also cited the apparent backward motion of President Kennedy's head in the Zapruder film, which some interpreted as inconsistent with a shot from behind. At this early stage, these claims were not presented as part of an elaborate conspiracy involving multiple institutions. They were, instead, framed as unresolved discrepancies that deserved further examination. Another early point of contention was the single bullet theory. To some observers, the idea that one bullet could enter President Kennedy's back, exit through his throat, and then go on to cause multiple wounds to Governor Connally appeared improbable. Critics questioned the physics involved and the positioning of the men in the vehicle. While the Warren Commission presented diagrams and timing analyses to support the theory, skepticism persisted among those unfamiliar with ballistic reconstruction or unconvinced by the explanation. These doubts were amplified by the visual power of the Zapruder film. Although the film was not immediately broadcast in full to the public, descriptions of it circulated widely. When it later became more accessible, viewers scrutinized it frame by frame. The film's visceral clarity made it a focal point for interpretation. People felt they were witnessing the event directly, rather than through official summaries. This sense of personal observation strengthened confidence in individual conclusions, even when those conclusions differed. The cultural environment of the mid-1960s further contributed to the spread of alternative theories. The Cold War had conditioned Americans to expect secrecy from their government. Intelligence agencies operated largely behind closed doors, and information was often withheld in the name of national security. This context made it easier for people to accept the possibility that not everything about the assassination had been disclosed. At the same time, trust in authority was beginning to shift. The assassination occurred at a moment when deference to institutions was still common, but no longer unquestioned. Younger generations, in particular, were more willing to challenge official accounts and demand transparency. As protests against the Vietnam War intensified later in the decade, skepticism toward government statements became more normalized. Books and televised discussions played a significant role in formalizing early conspiracy narratives. Authors published detailed critiques of the Warren Report, often highlighting specific inconsistencies rather than proposing comprehensive alternative explanations. These works did not necessarily claim to know who was responsible. Instead, they emphasized what they believed the investigation had failed to explain. Television debates brought these critiques into living rooms across the country. Viewers were presented with side-by-side interpretations of the same evidence, sometimes from experts with competing credentials. This format encouraged audiences to weigh arguments for themselves, reinforcing the idea that the assassination was not a settled matter. Another factor driving early conspiracy thinking was the death of Lee Harvey Oswald. Oswald's murder, occurring before any trial could take place, left a vacuum. For many, it felt like a critical opportunity for clarification had been lost. His insistence that he was a patsy took on added significance precisely because it could no longer be tested in court. Jack Ruby's motivations became a subject of speculation as well. Although the Warren Commission concluded that Ruby acted impulsively, some observers questioned how a civilian was able to access Oswald so easily inside a police facility. Ruby's known associations, while not proven to be directly relevant, added to the perception that events surrounding the assassination were unusually porous and poorly controlled. It is important to note that these early theories were not uniform. There was no single alternative narrative in the years immediately following the assassination. Instead, there was a collection of overlapping concerns: questions about ballistics, doubts about witness treatment, unease about missing or delayed information, and discomfort with how quickly the case had been closed. What unified these perspectives was not a shared conclusion, but a shared feeling, a sense that something about the official story felt incomplete. These ideas gained traction not because they offered definitive answers, but because they resonated emotionally and intuitively. They aligned with the experience of watching a trusted leader die on camera, followed by a rapid return to order that felt, to some, too neat. As time passed, these early doubts laid the groundwork for more elaborate theories. What began as questions about angles, timelines, and testimony would later expand to include allegations involving intelligence agencies, organized crime, and foreign governments. But at this initial stage, the focus remained relatively narrow. The first wave of conspiracy theories was less about assigning blame and more about expressing uncertainty. They emerged from the collision between lived experience and institutional explanation. They reflected a public struggling to reconcile what it had seen and heard with what it had been told. Understanding these early theories is essential, not because they provide answers, but because they reveal why belief in alternative explanations took hold so quickly and so deeply. They did not arise in isolation. They were shaped by context, culture, and the unresolved tension left behind when an event of enormous consequence was explained, but not fully absorbed. In the next part, the focus shifts from origins to endurance. Why, decades later, do these theories persist? What evidence and patterns do supporters point to? And how do they distinguish between documented facts, disputed claims, and speculation? That persistence and the reasoning behind it forms the next layer of this story. Evidence and patterns cited by supporters. By the time the first wave of alternative explanations had taken root, attention began to shift from broad doubts to specific details. Supporters of conspiracy theories did not argue that uncertainty alone proved wrongdoing. Instead, they pointed to what they saw as patterns, anomalies, and unresolved questions embedded within the record itself. These elements, taken together, became the foundation on which belief persisted. One of the most frequently cited areas involves witness testimony. In Dealey Plaza, more than 100 people were present when the shots were fired. In the immediate aftermath, many gave statements to police and reporters. While some accounts aligned with the conclusion that shots came from behind the motorcade, others described hearing gunfire from different directions. Several witnesses said the sounds appeared to come from the front or from the grassy area near the overpass. Supporters of alternative explanations emphasize that these accounts were not isolated. They argue that the number of people reporting similar impressions suggests more than simple confusion. Critics counter that echo effects, stress, and the acoustics of the plaza could explain these differences. Still, the existence of divergent testimony remains a central point of contention. Medical evidence is another area frequently cited. The autopsy performed at Bethesda Naval Hospital concluded that President Kennedy was struck by bullets fired from behind. However, supporters of conspiracy theories note that early descriptions of the president's wounds, particularly from doctors at Parkland Memorial Hospital, appeared inconsistent with later findings. Some medical personnel initially described a large wound at the back of the head, which they believed suggested an exit wound rather than an entry wound. These discrepancies were later addressed through formal testimony and clarification, but they left behind questions about how interpretations evolved over time. Supporters argue that changing descriptions undermine confidence. Skeptics respond that emergency treatment conditions and limited examination time explain the initial confusion. Photographic and documentary evidence has also been scrutinized extensively. The Zapruder film, in particular, occupies a central place in discussions of the assassination. As the clearest visual record of the shooting, it has been analyzed frame by frame for decades. Supporters of conspiracy theories focus on the apparent backward motion of Kennedy's head at the moment of impact, which they interpret as evidence of a shot from the front. Others note that neuromuscular reactions and momentum can produce counterintuitive movement. Despite these explanations, the film's vividness continues to invite personal interpretation. Its power lies not only in what it shows, but in how directly viewers feel they are witnessing history unfold. Beyond the film itself, questions have been raised about missing or altered materials. Some photographs taken in Dealey Plaza were never recovered or were released only in partial form. Audio recordings, radio transmissions, and notes from early investigators were incomplete or unavailable. Supporters argue that gaps in the record make it impossible to rule out alternative scenarios conclusively. Declassified documents have further fueled these concerns. Over the decades, thousands of pages related to the assassination have been released under the JFK Records Act. While many of these documents concern intelligence operations unrelated to the shooting itself, supporters point to the fact that some files remain partially redacted or withheld entirely. They argue that if the case is fully resolved, there should be no need for continued secrecy. Government agencies have countered that remaining redactions protect sources, methods, and foreign relationships, not evidence of conspiracy. Nonetheless, the existence of unreleased material continues to serve as a symbolic focal point for suspicion. Another frequently cited pattern involves the handling of evidence. Supporters note that the presidential limousine was cleaned and repaired shortly after the assassination, limiting the opportunity for extended forensic analysis. They also point to disputes over the chain of custody for certain items, including bullet fragments and medical materials. These issues do not, on their own, prove wrongdoing. However, they contribute to a perception that procedures were rushed or insufficiently cautious, particularly given the magnitude of the crime. Media coverage is also examined closely. In the months following the assassination, major outlets largely accepted the Warren Commission's conclusions. Supporters of alternative theories argue that dissenting voices were marginalized or portrayed as irresponsible. They suggest that this created an imbalance in public discourse, reinforcing official conclusions while discouraging sustained scrutiny. Over time, as investigative journalism became more adversarial, some of these early decisions were re-evaluated. Yet the initial framing left a lasting impression that certain questions were never fully explored. Supporters often emphasize that their position is not built on a single piece of evidence. Rather, it is the accumulation of small inconsistencies, omissions, and ambiguities that sustains doubt. Each element may have a plausible explanation, but taken together, they create what supporters describe as a pattern that resists closure. To understand this perspective clearly, it is important to distinguish between categories of information. Verified facts include the timing of the assassination, the identity of the accused, and the conclusions reached by official investigations. These elements are not disputed. Disputed claims involve interpretations of evidence, such as the direction of shots or the significance of certain witness statements. These are areas where reasonable disagreement exists. Speculation goes further, proposing connections or motives that cannot be confirmed through available records. Supporters and critics alike acknowledge that speculation varies widely in credibility. The persistence of belief often depends on how individuals weigh these categories. Those inclined toward alternative explanations may view disputed claims as evidence of deeper problems, while skeptics see them as expected complications in a chaotic event. Neither perspective exists in isolation. Each is shaped by broader attitudes toward authority, transparency, and historical accountability. In the late 1970s, renewed attention was brought to these issues by the House Select Committee on Assassinations. Its conclusion that there was a high probability of a conspiracy, based largely on acoustic analysis, was widely reported. Although the specific evidence supporting that claim was later challenged, the statement itself had a lasting impact on public perception. For supporters, it validated long-standing doubts. For skeptics, it illustrated how new interpretations could emerge without definitively resolving old questions. What becomes clear through this examination is that belief in conspiracy theories surrounding the assassination is sustained less by any single revelation than by an enduring sense of incompleteness. The record is vast, yet uneven. Answers exist, but not always where people expect them. Some questions have explanations that require technical understanding or trust in institutions that many no longer extend automatically. This tension between documentation and doubt is what keeps the debate alive. In the next part, the focus shifts to how these theories evolved over time, how they were amplified by media and technology, and how counter-analysis emerged in response. It is in that progression that the modern shape of the JFK assassination debate becomes fully visible. Evolution, amplification, and counter-analysis. As the years passed, the questions surrounding President Kennedy's assassination did not fade. Instead, they evolved. What began in the 1960s as focused concerns about ballistics, witness testimony, and investigative procedure gradually expanded into broader narratives. The scope of speculation widened, drawing in institutions, historical grievances, and global politics. This evolution did not occur all at once. It unfolded in stages, shaped by new information, cultural shifts, and changes in how people accessed and shared ideas. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, alternative explanations had moved beyond the question of whether more than one shooter was present. Some theories began to suggest that Oswald may not have acted independently, or may not have been the central figure at all. Attention shifted toward possible involvement by powerful organizations, including elements of the intelligence community, organized crime networks, and foreign governments. These expanded theories often reflected the broader mood of the era. The United States was undergoing a profound reckoning with authority. Revelations about covert intelligence operations, political surveillance, and deception related to the Vietnam War reshaped public trust. Investigations in the 1970s revealed that government agencies had engaged in activities previously dismissed as unthinkable. In that climate, the idea that the full truth about a presidential assassination might be obscured no longer seemed implausible to many. Theories involving intelligence agencies drew particular attention. Some proponents argued that Kennedy's conflicts with parts of the national security establishment, especially following the Bay of Pigs invasion and debates over Cold War strategy, provided motive for internal opposition. These claims often relied on patterns rather than direct evidence, pointing to strained relationships, policy disagreements, and the culture of secrecy that surrounded intelligence work at the time. Others focused on organized crime. These narratives emphasized the administration's aggressive stance against criminal syndicates, particularly through the efforts of Attorney General Robert Kennedy. Proponents cited historical ties between criminal organizations and certain political figures, suggesting retaliation as a possible motive. Again, direct documentation linking organized crime to the assassination remained elusive, but the theory persisted due to circumstantial associations and historical context. Foreign involvement theories also emerged. As these discussions expanded, some later theories also examined Kennedy's broader foreign policy posture, particularly where it brought him into tension with certain international governments during the early 1960s. Historically, it is documented that Kennedy challenged aspects of Allied nuclear policy, pressing certain international governments to permit international inspections of nuclear facilities and to adhere to emerging non-proliferation standards. His administration expressed concern about the spread of nuclear weapons and warned through diplomatic channels that continued U.S. support could be affected by non-compliance. These positions were recorded in official correspondence and reflected Kennedy's broader effort to limit nuclear escalation during the Cold War. Over time, some theorists incorporated these documented policy disputes into wider narratives, suggesting that Kennedy's willingness to apply pressure even toward Allied countries contributed to unease among multiple power centers. In these interpretations, the emphasis was not on any specific nation's involvement, but on the idea that Kennedy's foreign policy approach disrupted established expectations and relationships. Alongside foreign policy considerations, conspiracy narratives increasingly focused on Kennedy's domestic conflicts with powerful institutions inside the United States. These discussions pointed to well-documented tensions between the Kennedy administration and elements of the intelligence community, particularly in the aftermath of the Bay of Pigs invasion. They also referenced disagreements with segments of the military establishment over escalation strategies during the Cold War, as well as the administration's aggressive pursuit of organized crime through the Department of Justice under Attorney General Robert Kennedy. Additionally, Kennedy's evolving civil rights stance placed him at odds with entrenched political and economic power structures, particularly in the American South, where segregationist resistance remained strong. Some interpretations viewed these combined pressures, foreign and domestic, as part of a broader environment in which Kennedy was seen as challenging existing power arrangements. It is important to emphasize that no official investigation has found evidence linking any foreign government or domestic institution to the assassination. These arguments emerged later, shaped by historical hindsight, declassified documents, and broader distrust of authority, rather than by direct proof. As with other expanded theories, they persist as contextual speculation rather than substantiated conclusions. Alternatively, some speculated about Cuban or Soviet responsibility, citing Oswald's defection to the Soviet Union and his pro-Castro activities. These ideas were often tempered by the recognition that such involvement would have carried enormous geopolitical risk. Official investigations consistently rejected foreign government responsibility, but the mere existence of these inquiries reinforced public curiosity. As theories multiplied, media played an increasingly influential role in shaping how they were received. Books became more detailed and more assertive. Rather than simply questioning the Warren Commission's conclusions, some authors proposed comprehensive alternative reconstructions of the assassination. These works often synthesized earlier doubts into cohesive narratives, presenting them as corrective histories rather than speculative exercises. Film and television further amplified this shift. The release of the Zapruder film to a wider audience transformed public engagement with the assassination. Viewers no longer relied solely on descriptions or still images. They could watch the event unfold repeatedly, forming their own interpretations. This visual access deepened emotional investment and reinforced the sense that official explanations were open to challenge. Dramatized portrayals also had a significant impact. Films that questioned the lone gunman conclusion reached large audiences, embedding skepticism into popular culture. While these works were often framed as interpretations rather than documentaries, their emotional force shaped public memory. For many viewers, cinematic narratives became as influential as official reports. The rise of the internet marked another turning point. Online forums allowed individuals to share research, debate interpretations, and circulate documents without institutional mediation. Information that once required access to archives or specialized publications became widely available. This democratization of information accelerated both analysis and amplification. At the same time, it blurred distinctions between evidence, interpretation, and speculation. As digital platforms evolved into social media, the dynamics shifted again. Algorithms rewarded engagement, often privileging emotionally compelling content over nuanced analysis. Short clips, striking claims, and simplified narratives traveled faster than careful contextualization. In this environment, complex historical debates were frequently reduced to binaries: truth versus cover-up, believer versus skeptic. Public perception reflected these changes. Polling over the decades consistently showed that a significant portion of Americans doubted the lone gunman conclusion. Younger generations, encountering the assassination primarily through secondary media rather than lived experience, often absorbed skepticism as the default position. Doubt became part of the story itself. Alongside this amplification, counter-analysis developed in parallel. Scientists, historians, and forensic experts revisited the evidence using improved methods. Ballistic modeling, computer simulations, and acoustic analysis were applied to questions that had once been addressed with limited tools. In many cases, these reassessments reinforced the plausibility of the official timeline and physical explanations. Critics of conspiracy theories pointed out logical inconsistencies. Some proposed scenarios required levels of coordination and secrecy that would be difficult to maintain over decades. Others relied on selective interpretation of evidence, while dismissing contrary data. Skeptics emphasize that absence of proof is not proof of absence, but neither is it proof of conspiracy. Expert responses also highlighted the nature of large investigations. Complex events generate conflicting testimony. Early reports evolve as more information becomes available. Errors and omissions do not necessarily imply intent to deceive. From this perspective, the imperfections of the record reflected human limitation rather than hidden design. Yet even as counter-analysis addressed specific claims, belief persisted. Part of this endurance can be attributed to psychology. Humans are pattern-seeking by nature. When an event carries immense emotional weight, people are less satisfied with explanations that feel random or impersonal. A lone individual acting independently can seem insufficient to account for a national trauma. Mistrust also reinforces itself. Each withheld document, even when explained by bureaucratic or diplomatic considerations, becomes a symbol of concealment. Each revision or clarification is interpreted by some as evidence that earlier statements were incomplete. Over time, skepticism becomes not just a position on a specific event, but a broader worldview. What emerges from this evolution is not a single conspiracy narrative, but a layered ecosystem of belief. Some individuals focus narrowly on forensic details. Others emphasize institutional behavior. Still others engage with the assassination as a cultural metaphor, representing lost innocence or the fragility of democracy. These perspectives overlap, diverge, and coexist. The tension between amplification and analysis has never fully resolved. Each new generation revisits the assassination through its own lens, informed by contemporary concerns about power, transparency, and accountability. The story adapts not because new evidence continually overturns old conclusions, but because the questions it raises remain relevant. In the final part of this documentary, the focus shifts again, away from competing explanations and toward their consequences. How has this enduring uncertainty shaped public trust, media behavior, and collective memory? What does the persistence of doubt reveal about the relationship between citizens and institutions? And perhaps most importantly, what remains unresolved, not just in the historical record, but in the human need for meaning in the face of uncertainty? Impact and uncertainty. More than half a century after the assassination of President Kennedy, the debate surrounding it remains unresolved, not because the historical record is empty, but because its meaning continues to shift. The enduring uncertainty has had consequences that extend far beyond Dealey Plaza. For For many Americans, the assassination marked a psychological turning point. It was not only the loss of a president, but the loss of an assumption. Before November 1963, there was a widespread belief that the nation's institutions, while imperfect, were fundamentally stable and trustworthy. The events that followed challenged that belief in subtle but lasting ways. The idea that a single individual could alter the course of history so dramatically was unsettling. For some, it felt random and insufficient. For others, it suggested vulnerability, not just in leadership, but in the systems designed to protect it. When official explanations failed to fully quiet public doubt, that unease settled into the background of American political culture. Over time, this uncertainty contributed to a broader pattern of mistrust. As subsequent decades revealed real instances of government secrecy, deception, and abuse of power, earlier doubts were reinforced rather than resolved. The Kennedy assassination became part of a larger narrative about transparency and accountability. It was no longer viewed in isolation, but as an early chapter in a longer story about the limits of institutional credibility. Media played a central role in shaping this outcome. In the immediate aftermath of the assassination, news organizations largely echoed official findings, reflecting the norms of the era. As journalism evolved, so did coverage. Investigative reporting began to challenge authority more directly, revisiting past events with a critical lens. The assassination was re-examined not just as a crime, but as a case study in how information is controlled and disseminated. In the modern media environment, these dynamics are amplified. Algorithms reward engagement, and engagement often favors emotionally resonant content. Complex historical analysis struggles to compete with simplified narratives and dramatic framing. As a result, uncertainty itself becomes a form of currency. Questions circulate more readily than answers. Suspicion travels faster than context. This does not mean that doubt is irrational. Human beings are naturally inclined to seek patterns, especially in moments of profound loss. When an event feels too large to be explained by chance, people look for intention. They look for systems, motives, and connections that restore a sense of order, even if that order is unsettling. The Kennedy assassination invites this response because it sits at the intersection of power, secrecy, and trauma. It involved the highest office in the nation, occurred during a period of geopolitical tension, and unfolded in public view. It was documented extensively, yet unevenly. The record is vast, but not seamless. Some materials are missing. Others remain classified or partially redacted. Testimony conflicts. Interpretations diverge. These gaps matter, not necessarily because they conceal definitive answers, but because they leave space. Space for doubt. Space for speculation. Space for competing narratives to coexist. There are questions that remain unresolved. Why were certain documents withheld for so long? And why do some remain restricted today? Why did different investigations reach slightly different conclusions, even when examining the same evidence? Why do some witnesses stand by their accounts despite official explanations that contradict them? It is possible that these questions have explanations rooted in bureaucracy, security concerns, or the limitations of historical investigation. It is also possible that some answers will never be known with certainty. Time erodes evidence. Memories fade. Records are lost or destroyed. History does not always resolve cleanly. What is clear is that the assassination of John F. Kennedy occupies a unique place in collective memory. It functions not only as a historical event, but as a mirror, reflecting how societies respond to uncertainty, how trust is built and broken, and how narratives endure even when facts are contested. This documentary has not sought to prove or disprove any single theory. It has examined the official findings, the origins of alternative explanations, the evidence cited by supporters, and the ways those ideas evolved over time. It has shown how skepticism emerged, how it was amplified, and how it has been challenged. Throughout, the emphasis has been on understanding, not persuasion. The truth, whatever its full shape may be, exists within a complex landscape of evidence, interpretation, and belief. Some viewers may find reassurance in the official conclusions. Others may remain unconvinced. Many will occupy a space somewhere in between, acknowledging both the strength of established findings and the discomfort of unresolved questions. That space is not a failure of history. It is a reflection of it. Before closing, it is important to be explicit. The theories, claims, and interpretations discussed in this documentary are presented for informational and discussion purposes only. They are not asserted as fact. No allegation of wrongdoing is made against any individual or institution beyond what is documented in historical records and public discourse. There is no intent to defame, misrepresent, or draw conclusions beyond the available evidence. This exploration is about how stories are told, questioned, and remembered, and perhaps about why some stories never fully settle. Thank you for spending this time with Whims and Whispers. If you found this documentary thoughtful or engaging, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps these long-form explorations continue. If there is another historical mystery or conspiracy you would like us to examine next, share it in the comments below. Until then, this is one story that continues to echo, not because it lacks answers, but because it asks questions that still matter.